Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar on helping children thrive in school, both academically and socially. In this webinar, we're going to talk about how to help your child thrive academically and socially. And for those of you who don't know me, you might be wondering, who am I? And what makes me an expert on child behavior, and why should you listen to me? So my name is Blaise Ryan. I'm a practitioner of traditional Chinese medicine. If you're not familiar with traditional Chinese medicine, it's an ancient medicine that focuses on the root cause of health issues as well as the actual symptoms. And I got involved in child behavior development because traditional Chinese medicine includes a large portion of psychology in its training. And I found in my clinical practice how patient after patient would have health issues that came either from psychological unmet needs when they were children, or emotional or physical unmet needs that happen when they're children. Sometimes it was habits or behavioral patterns that started really young, and these behavioral habits or lifestyle habits stayed with them into their adulthood, and it was affecting their health and well-being into their adulthood. So as I became a parent and a father, I became even more interested in healthy child development and psychological development. So I did as much research as I could, and I mentored with some of the top instructors in aware parenting in the world, and I founded the Parent Learning Club to help bring forth a lot of this information. I found that a lot of information that was out there from different teachers, they would have very specific techniques or some real keys to helping their children be more emotionally grounded, fulfilled, more whole children. But a lot of the techniques and main methods were kind of hidden amongst a lot of other jargon or different ideas. So as I went through this information, I started to extract the main keys from different sources, and I compiled them all into the book I wrote called Democratic Parenting, which includes the most effective methods for helping children think clearly and to have good judgment. Now, a lot of people ask me, democratic parenting, does that mean our children get to vote? No, it has nothing to do with that. But it is helping our children have freedom of choice. Okay? So the thing is that if a child, it's not a matter of giving children the ability to choose, that what games they can play and how they run their lives, because as children they don't have the capacity or the knowledge to have that type of discretion and discipline. Us parents have to apply that and help them through that. But often children will behave in ways that are counter against their best judgment. What I mean is that oftentimes they know that their behavior is not appropriate or not good, but they are compelled to behave in a specific way because of their emotions or of stress. We call it in psychology or in medicine amygdala hijacking. It's where the amygdala part of the brain is taken over their higher functions of the frontal cortex, which is the frontal cortex is involved in clear thinking and in judgment, in memory, recall, and the amygdala is involved more in survival and instincts and emotions. So the amygdala, we call it the lizard brain because lizards and reptiles have this portion, and what separates us from reptiles is that we have the frontal cortex, the executive function, the frontal lobe of the brain, which allows us to think more clearly and to have better judgment on our choices. So a lot of the children know better rationally and logically. If you can get them into a calm state, they know better, but they'll behave in ways that are against that and that can cause all kinds of problems. We see this with children who have temper tantrums or who have uncontrollable emotions, or we think that they have no logical or rational reason to be behaving the way that they're doing or to be feeling or the way that they're feeling, but they're behaving and feeling that way anyways. And that's because the executive functioning of the frontal cortex is being hijacked by the amygdala, lizard, instinctual, and emotional part of the brain. Okay? So democratic parenting is basically a whole bunch of different methods to help reduce the amygdala hijacking, to meet their deeper needs, to reduce the stress overload that causes that, so that children can actually choose, so that they can have democracy within them, their own sense of inner self-discipline and control over their behavior, rather than just reacting out of their feelings and their impulses. So that's what it's really all about. And that's really the foundation of the theory that's presented in democratic parenting is the foundation for my approach with all child behavior. And that's where we're going to be talking about today, when how to help children thrive in school academically and socially using the democratic parenting theory as our base. And I also created the ADHD transformation program as well. And this program, we can learn more about it on the parentlearningclub.com. It basically helps children, whether they've been diagnosed with ADHD or not, to focus better and to think better, to overcome the symptoms with ADHD. Let's talk about school and how we can help our children thrive in it. So first off, what's the purpose of school? Well, it's education. That's pretty obvious, right? Education equals learning, and that equals skills. The point of school is really to give our children life skills. We want to teach them knowledge and information that will assist them to achieve the greatest level of happiness, success, and health in life, right? Now, is our school system perfect? No, it's not perfect at all. And if any of you are familiar with TED.com, you can see that the most popular talk of all time is by Sir Ken Robinson, this talk is called How Schools Kill Creativity. And he talks specifically how the modern public school system has a lot of negative drawbacks on creativity and on the entire whole being of the child. So there's lots of drawbacks with the school system, right? But the thing to remember is that it's evolving. There is much room for improvement on all levels. But we have to remember that it's come a really long way. And there's really a lot of good that our children can extract from their school experience. So we're going to focus in this webinar on how to help them with that. Now remember, every situation is unique. And sometimes it might be best to pull your child out of the school that they're in. So the reason I'm talking about this is because sometimes it is the school, right? Sometimes your child might do better in a different school environment, maybe with a different teacher or a different principal with different students. We sometimes have to make that call. So let's just take a quick look at what circumstances would you pull your child out of the school that they're in. In my opinion, if the child is being harmed either mentally, emotionally, or physically, and the teacher and or principal is not cooperative to protect your child, they're not either cooperative or they're unable to do so for a variety of different reasons, then, or if your children may be harmed by another student or the teacher or any other adults in the school, then under these circumstances, it probably, in my opinion, is wise to pull your child out of that school and to find a different school. Now, in some cases, it might be the best thing to make this call. But for many parents, this is not a viable or even desirable or even a necessary option. So let's talk about how we can help your child thrive in the school that they're presently engaged in. Now, there are two levels of learning that our children receive in school. We have the academic learning and the social learning. Each of them, in my opinion, is equally important. We're going to talk about that in this webinar. First off, the academic education. This is the development of mental skills, right? Learning, processing information and knowledge, and recalling it, and communicating that information, whether it's verbally or written. So the skills that are learned are memory, recall, logical and critical thinking, problem solving, focus and concentration, reading, writing, mathematics, processes and procedures, and the list could go on about the different types of academic and left side of the brain skills that we learn from this part of our education. Now, the social education is the development of social skills, and this comes about through the interactions and play with other students in the school. These are just as important as the academic education. These are the types of things where we learn how to communicate more on a social level, on a one-to-one level, teamwork. We learn empathy, social competence and confidence, creative problem solving, because oftentimes the type of problem solving that's required in social problems is a lot more different than academic problems. We learn conflict resolution, healthy emotional boundaries, good judgment, and also to have good judgment around behavior and values, right, among a few. And the list, again, could go on about the different types of things that children learn in school on a social education level. So how can we help your child think clearly and have good judgment, both academically and socially? So we need to understand, first off, is that the mind and our emotions are intrinsically linked and connected. Okay? So we talk about academic education and social education. On a social level, oftentimes the emotions get more involved. And on an academic level, it's oftentimes the mind that's more involved. But on both of them, we need to have the mind and emotions aligned and focus on the same thing. For a child to thrive academically, their emotions have to be as equally engaged as their mind into whatever they're learning. Same thing for them to thrive socially. Their mind and emotions have to be aligned in the same way when they're engaged on the playground or with other children in the hallways. Okay? That way they'll be able to respond to a variety of challenges that come their way on either end of the spectrum, right? Whether it's academically or socially. So our minds are like computers. Just like a computer, if too many programs are running or if too much memory is being used, then the computer will not function properly. Right? The mind will struggle with focus and absorption and learning, right? If there's just too many things going on. As well as that the mind will have difficulty having good social judgment around how they should behave and respond, or they might have a hard time refraining and being disciplined with their emotional impulses and their behavior, right? So if the mind is distracted internally by too much unprocessed stimulation, feelings, or memories, basically too many programs running in the background, then the mind cannot align with the emotions properly to think clearly and have good judgment, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's on the playground. The key is really understanding what programs are running in the background of your child's mind that are inhibiting them from having that natural, clear thinking and good judgment. Okay? So maybe there might be emotions that are running in the background, or maybe there's just too much stimulation that they haven't processed. Now, if they are emotions, we want to understand, well, what are they? What are the emotions? And what are they caused by? Could it be fears, anxieties, worries, insecurities, or maybe anger, frustration, resentment, irritation, impatience, or sadness, grief, emotional hurts, or maybe it's confusion, overwhelm, and stress. So, and what are these caused by? Well, in my book, Democratic Parenting, I talk about the 4 types of stress. And when I'm talking about stress, I'm talking about any type of influence that needs to be processed. And if it's not processed, then it can build up and it can cause a type of internal tension, which if this tension, again, is not processed and resolved, it will create a type of pressure. And if that is maintained to any degree or for any prolonged period of time, it will create a type of stress. Okay, so there's a few different types of stress, and it's important for us to understand what they are to help our children heal through these and to not hold on to release them, to process them so that they can return to the state of clear thinking. If stress is in the system for the child, or even for any person for that matter, if stress is maintained there, then their clear thinking and their good judgment is inhibited by the stress. Just take your own life example, your own life experience as an example, right? If you feel overwhelmed and stressed, if something's bothering you, something's happening in your personal life or your family life, anything like that that's really bothering you and that's nagging at you that you haven't had a chance to process, then that kind of, it's like a program running in the background of your computer that uses a lot of memory or a lot of disk space, and sometimes you find yourself making mistakes or forgetting things here or there, or just running around too much because there's too much going on. There's too much stress, and at the same time you have these background programs running, and it just drains you, right? Children are the same way. They have the same thing. Oftentimes, children are even more sensitive to these types of influences than adults because over time, over the years, through our development, we've often become desensitized to different types of stimulation influences. So these 4 types of stress. There's aggressive stress, and this is caused by violence or aggression, right? So any type of physical violence or emotional violence. If someone yells at you, for example, it's a type of aggressive stress that you take on. Or if someone hits you, right, that's a type of aggressive stress that you feel. Stress, another definition of stress could be unprocessed hurts, right? Physical, mental, or emotional hurts that are not unprocessed can also be called stress. Passive stress. This is like the pressure of unmet needs, specific things that we need that if we don't have them met, it creates like a stress. Then we have situational stress, basically stress caused by life changes, perhaps a new school, moving homes, divorce, death or injury in the family, or death of a pet. A lot of different types of things can cause a type of situational stress, life changes that are nobody's fault, but they do require some time for the child to process the whole experience and to get used to the changes. And then we have physiological stress, basically health, right? If your child is lacking nutrients and essential vitamins and minerals and things in their diet, then that can cause a type of physiological stress. If there's too much sugar, for example, then that can cause a type of internal inflammation. If your child is not sleeping enough, that is a physiological stress on their entire system, and it will affect their mind as well as their body. So these are the 4 types of stress that can cause either these emotions that we're talking about, or that can be basically programs running in the background that are inhibiting them from thinking clearly, from having good judgment. So quickly, I also want to talk about these essential childhood needs. This is important in order to determine what might be the root cause of some of your child's behavior, why that they might have a hard time focusing or paying attention. Why are they withdrawn on the playground? Why are they getting, why are they so resistant or upset about school, or why don't they like homework, or any type of the challenge that we deal with in the school setting, academically and socially? We want to always look at whether passive stress, unmet need, is at play. And when we're looking at passive stress, we have to look at these essential childhood needs to see if there might be needs that are unmet. Okay, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, but also give you a good breakdown of what these are and why they're important. So one need is challenge, right? We all have the need for challenge or appropriate stimulation. If a child is not stimulated enough, then they don't feel engaged, right? It's not fun for them. It's not enough challenge. But if it's too challenging, or if it's overstimulating, then it's overwhelming and they get discouraged too easily, right? So it's really a balance of challenge. So there is a need for challenge, but again, it has to be appropriate to their age and their abilities, just enough to engage them and to get them interested, but not too much that it overwhelms them. Then there's a need for autonomy, and this is something that all humans have. We need to feel autonomous. We need to feel like we have power, the power to choose, and we have some control and power over our lives. A child whose need for autonomy does not get met will develop a lot of difficult behavioral patterns to force their need for autonomy. This is often behaviors like backtalk and defiance, temper tantrums or anything like that will basically force this sense of autonomy, because they're going to say, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to do what you say because you never allow me to have any power, any choice. So really, the autonomy is the desire for a sense of power. So we need to meet our child's need for autonomy by giving them opportunities where they can express that and practice that autonomy in safe and appropriate environments and situations. If that's met, you'll find that your children are a lot more cooperative, a lot more easy to deal with, and any types of defiance or backtalk will quite literally disappear if their need for autonomy is met. Creative expression or fun, right? Fun and creative expression, we all need this. Children need to just have fun and to play and to express themselves creatively. The need for consistency and predictability, right? This is a big one. It has to do with for children to feel secure and to know what's coming up next. And the need for processing, okay? So this is a real huge one that is often not given the appropriate attention around childhood need, is the need for processing. We live in a world now, the modern lifestyle is so fast and it's so overwhelmingly full of information and stimulation that never before have humans been called to process this amount of stimulation and information that we have at our fingertips today, or that we're just bombarded with on a daily basis. Our lives go so fast from one thing to the next. And as such, as adults, we often have exceeding responsibilities financially and social responsibilities. A lot of different types of responsibilities can be burdens for us. And children are quite often just forced to keep up and to just follow along. And this can add to their degree of stress and just nonstop stimulation and movement and experience. Children, as well as adults, but here we're talking about children, need time and space to process the stimulation that they encounter, the experiences that they have, all the information that they absorb in school. Again, the experiences at school that they might have with other children, the interactions, as well as their feelings and their emotions that might come up through these interactions, whether it's their social interactions at school or their interactions at home with their siblings and their parents, right? This need for processing is vitally important, and it really allows children to clean up if we go back to the analogy of the mind being like a computer, the processing is kind of like the disk cleanup function or the defragmenting function on your computer. It basically cleans up all the unnecessary files and puts them away, right? And this is vital for a computer to function properly, is that it needs to be defragmented and cleaned up every now and again, just like your home needs to be swept and your kitchen needs to be cleaned in order to make more food, right? This cleanup always has to happen. And processing, to allowing the time and space for your child to process experiences and feelings and emotions and information, is like the cleanup time. And it's once you know how to help your child have the space and time and what types of activities and things will help them process, then you can see that they can absorb a lot more information because they don't have these programs running in the background, to go back to that analogy. Another need is the need for connection. The need for connection is perhaps the most vital of all needs that children have, simply because instinctually children know that their very survival is dependent upon their connection with their adult caregivers. So anything that threatens or undermines their sense of connection, and the key word here is their sense of connection, will cause an instinctual response to make them go into the amygdala part of their brain, because they'll feel on an instinctual level that their very survival is being threatened if their sense of connection with their parents is broken for any extreme or prolonged period of time. Now this will vary from child to child, and also based upon their age, how much of this connection needs to be enforced. Okay, but this is an absolutely critical piece of childhood needs, and a lot of the theory that I talk about and the principles that we teach at the Parent Learning Club involve the need for connection at the very center of things. Because if this need for connection is met, it allows for greater communication and much greater influence. You'll find that children who feel connected to you will cooperate with you no matter what. You can get children to do all kinds of things that they might have been resistant to or defiant about just hours or days before, once this sense of connection is reestablished. So a lot of the techniques and methods that we talk about at the Parent Learning Club, or in the courses, or in my book Democratic Parenting, or in the webinars that we offer at the Parent Learning Club, involve techniques to either strengthen connection or to reach through disconnect to reestablish this connection. Moving on to the next need is the need for information and understanding. Again, children are young, they're learning about the world. Oftentimes they need to have information given to them so they can put situations or experiences into the proper context to understand them better, to maybe not take them personally, or just to know about them so that they don't feel confused. Because confusion, the sense of confusion, is stressful for anybody. Nobody likes to feel confused and uncertain about things. So children don't have, or oftentimes missing information, right? Sometimes it's just information about certain rules or etiquette in an environment that they might feel, they might kind of get themselves into, but they don't understand or they don't know the rules. They need this type of information so that they can know how to behave within that context more appropriately, right? So the need for information and understanding is a big one. Also, the need for encouragement, incredibly crucial. We all have this, and for children, there's a child who's misbehaving often needs at some level some more encouragement. Okay, the need for contribution and participation, again, a really critical need. Children love to contribute. They love to participate. They love to help out. I believe that all children are naturally generous givers, and when they don't give generously naturally, it's because they have an unmet need that is causing them a type of stress, or they have another type of stress that is basically is like a program running over their natural process of just giving naturally and freely, right? So there's usually something inhibiting their natural desire to give generously and naturally, and to participate and contribute. So when you get a child to contribute and participate, it will often make them feel more connected and meet other of their needs as well. The need for attention, right? We all know that this is a fundamental basic need that, again, if we've all heard before that a child who doesn't get good attention will sometimes seek bad attention, right? Because bad attention is better than no attention at all. And we see it all around us where children who are lacking a type of attention will grow up developing certain behavioral patterns just to get any type of attention, right? So it's important to meet our child's need for attention. And I talk a lot more about specific ways to do that in a healthy and balanced way in my book, as well as some of the other webinars and courses. So a few more, just the last 5 of these childhood needs, and these are involved a lot around the physical needs. So healthy nutrition, obviously a physiological need for our cells to function properly, for our brains and all our organs to function, for us to grow. Exercise is absolutely crucial. Good sleep, safety and security, obviously, and physical affection, right? And again, we're going to talk about peer pressure and how to keep children away from bad behaviors with other students. And so if we meet all of these childhood needs at home, then oftentimes they won't seek these needs through perhaps other influences at school that we might not want them engaged in. Okay, so these are the 15 essential childhood needs, and if you go to the Parent Learn, if you really want to get more information on this, you can go to the Parent Learning Club, and there's under the webinars, there's an entire webinar I did on these 15 essential childhood needs, which I go a bit deeper into them and talk about different ways to meet them if you feel that these might be at play in some of your child's behavior. Okay, so now we talked about the different reasons for challenging or difficult child behavior. My basic hypothesis that's presented in democratic parenting, and the foundation of a lot of the work that I do around child behavior and development, involves these 3 underlying reasons. We talked about unmet needs, that we just went through these 15 needs. We talked about stress. And finally, the last one is around models. So children are natural born mimics, right? They model the world around them. That's how they learn how to walk and talk and behave and respond to situations from their role models. Parents are the primary role models for children, but there are other role models as well. For example, the students in their school, their teachers, as well as the types of behavior that is modeled on video games, in movies, videos, on television shows, and on all types of media, even on songs that their children might listen to, right? So these are all influences that can change your child's behavior, because they see these types of behavior or these ideas or this information that is being presented in all types of environments, and they might behave in ways to kind of try this behavior on. So when we see our child behaving in any specific way, then we want to go through these 3 things and say, okay, well, why is my child behaving like this? Is it because there's a model that's showing them this type of behavior and they're trying it out? Or maybe they have some stress that they need some help with, or maybe there's some unmet needs there. They just maybe need to process some things, or they're missing some information about something, or maybe they just need a bit more encouragement, or maybe they're really lacking some attention, so they need a bit of some one-on-one time with us to really fill up that their cup, their need for attention cup. Okay. So the first step is to understand the root cause of your child's challenge with school, right? So we're talking about different types of challenges that your child might have with school in order to help them really thrive. Now, this applies to all children, whether they have special needs or learning disabilities or behavioral problems or not, right? These 3 root causes apply to them all. Even a child with severe learning disabilities or special needs will have will have models, will have stress, and has needs. Oftentimes they have even more or special needs that need to be met. But the basic 15 needs that I just went through will apply to all children. So once you know the underlying reason for their challenge, needs, stress, or models, then you know where to put your attention to resolve it. So general solutions, right? If there's an unmet need, then you solve the problem by meeting the needs. If there's stress, then you help them process or heal the stress. And if there's models, if that's the cause of their behavioral problems or their issues or worries or fears, then we want to limit the exposure or give them information and understanding about the influence so they can put it in the proper context, right? So let's look at some specific examples and situations. Let's look at the example of difficulty focusing and learning. So a child is having a hard time focusing and paying attention in class or learning the material and information. So we're going to use this framework that I just presented around the 3 underlying root causes, around understanding their unmet needs, stress, role models, and then approaching these issues systematically. So first, let's look at some possible needs. The important thing to remember here is that this is not a one-size-fits-all. Every child is unique. Every child is quirky in their own way. Every child has different living arrangements and thus will have different needs. So we have to look at the child based upon their specific needs and their specific circumstances. So that's why I'm going to present different possibilities here so we can see how to use this framework that I just went through around the 15 needs and the 3 reasons for behavior to resolve any type of problem or issue that you might find yourself facing with your child. So possible unmet needs around focus and learning. So perhaps they're not getting enough sleep, or perhaps their nutrition is lacking. Maybe they need a little bit more healthy nutrition. Maybe there's too much sugar in their diet. Now, these things are big causes around attention issues. I did a lot of research on ADHD when I was developing the ADHD transformation program, and it's shocking the amount of children who are not getting either the amount or the quality sleep that they need in order to function properly. And it's also shocking when you start to see how much sugar and how many additives and preservatives and chemicals are in the average child's diet, and how few nutrients and essential vitamins are in a lot of children's foods today. So it's important, this looks very basic and common sense stuff, but it's important to always look at this. Now, other possible unmet needs. They might be lacking some encouragement. Maybe they haven't done as well as they hoped. Maybe the sense of, they've done so poorly in school and academically for a while now, they're just discouraged. So they need more encouragement. Perhaps they need more attention themselves. If a child is having a difficult time paying attention, they might need to have more attention themselves, okay, so that they can learn how to focus their full attention. A great way to do this is to model the ability to focus full attention on them. And in my book, Democratic Parenting, there's a specific technique called play attention time where you do this with your child. And this is incredibly healing for the child and will help them kind of clear up their own attention. Or very often they have a need for processing, okay, the need for processing feelings, emotions, stress, experiences, or information or overstimulation, all right? So other possible stress factors, they might have aggressive stress. Perhaps they're being bullied, whether overtly or subtly by exclusion in their social environment. Or maybe there's some passive stress, like the unmet needs we just went through. Or maybe there's situational stress, that they're going through some life changes. Maybe at home their parents are getting divorced, or they're moving, or there's some instability in their environment that is causing stress on them. So we look at these different types of underlying root causes, and then from there we develop the solution based upon this, right? So if it is sleep, then we want to improve their sleep and their eating habits. We increase the amount of encouragement. We give them this full attention time, and we help them process stimulation and emotions, or we limit the influence of stress and healing stress, right? So you see, once you understand and get to the root cause, the solution is very simple. We just focus on meeting these needs and either limiting the source of stress or helping them heal from stress. Going to another example, homework, right? If a child has resistance to doing homework or frustration with it. Possible unmet needs, again, encouragement. Or maybe connection. Perhaps they don't feel connected to what they're doing. They don't feel engaged in school. They don't see the use in it. Or they just feel disconnected in general. Again, attention might be another one. Maybe they have the need for exercise. They're not getting enough exercise in school. Therefore, when they get home, if they didn't get enough exercise, they just have a hard time sitting still. And because they don't want to, they want to move their bodies if they've sat still in school all day, or they didn't get enough physical activity. Or maybe they need a bit more fun, so just to lighten their state of being so that they can get a bit more serious with schoolwork. Maybe they need some information or understanding as to why it's important for them to do schoolwork. Or the need for autonomy, right? They might feel forced to do this, that they have no choice, or powerless. They're just forced to do it. So they put up this resistance in order to assert some autonomy that's not being met. So if we can give them some type of information, understanding why they're doing it, if we can give them a bit of time so to have some fun, and we can meet their need for autonomy, they might be more naturally willing to do it. Perhaps they need a little bit more balance with the challenge of homework. Maybe it's too hard for them. They feel discouraged by that. Or maybe it's too easy and it's just boring for them, right? And again, the need for processing as well might be there again. Possible stress factors, the same ones here. It could be aggressive stress, passive stress, situational stress. Again, these just might be programs running in the background we might want to look through to see a possible cause for their resistance and frustration with homework. So possible solutions. This is a great one, is to develop an after-school routine with your child that allows them to complete their homework and allows them time for processing their day, okay? So also you make a homework time connection and attention time with your child. So this is a very useful method for children who have difficulty or resistance or frustration with homework. You work with them. You call a meeting, or at some point you can talk to them and say and ask them, give them the opportunity to communicate and to exert some autonomy. By engaging your child in this way, it meets their need for autonomy, it meets their need for information, understanding, it meets their need for encouragement, connection, and attention, and for challenge. Because you're asking them, how could we, you could say, you need to do homework because it's important for you to excel and do well in school so that you can succeed in life and to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And then when you're in school, when you're doing the tests, you'll do them easily because you'll know everything. Homework is an opportunity to get good at everything you practice in school, and it's vitally important. You let them know that, so you're giving them information and understanding. And then you can ask them, so how can we have some time after school? Do you want to do homework right away when you get home, or do you want to do some time to play by yourself, or would you like to play with me for a little while? And you give them different options about how they can structure their time after school. Now, you want to do this within your own capacity, right? Because only you know your own schedule. You might have very little time after school. Maybe they're in an after-school program because you're working late, and so the time, the amount of time you have with them is very short. But it doesn't matter. Given the amount of time, you give them maybe 2 or 3 options for them to make some decisions and choices on regarding within that framework. When you do that, then it will meet their need for autonomy, and they'll feel also their need for participation and contribution is met as well, right? And they feel connected. They might feel more interested in this. And the other thing that this does is it holds them accountable because they're choosing this as well. So it's a great way to get them involved with homework. Then the other thing to do is, if they are frustrated, if they have a hard time with homework, you can adjust your own schedule so that you're doing homework with them. So you sit down with them and you make the homework time the special connection and attention time with your child, through which you're going to give them your full attention and give them lots of encouragement this whole time. This will meet their need for, again, attention, encouragement, and attention. Okay? So this is a great way to help them through that, based upon understanding the needs and the stress factors. Let's look at another example of bullying. Right? Big problem today. Luckily, our schools are a lot more aware of it, so a lot of the schools have different processes in place to prevent bullying and to respond to this. possible unmet needs, right? If a child is being bullied, they have a major unmet need of connection because they're feeling disconnected and hurt by the bully. Safety and security is not being met. They feel very discouraged because they're abused by the bully. Their sense of autonomy is completely broken because they have no power, and they are needing some information and understanding about the behavior of the bully. So possible stress factors here, it's definitely aggressive stress, okay? And then the solutions would be obviously talking with the teacher and the principal, right? You have to take a proactive role here to reach out to the school and to talk with the authorities there to put some limits there. And then you can help them process the stress and the feelings. So this way you're going to help your child heal from the physical and emotional hurts that might have come about from the bullying. This is important. This is basically helping to turn off the program that's running in the background of their psychological and emotional state, which is the unprocessed hurt from the experience with the bully. You need to help them heal and process and work through these feelings to help turn off or minimize that program from running so that they can just release that and come back to school and to the situation with clearer thinking and better judgment about how to respond to the bully. We can also encourage the child to bond with other students, and we can give information and perspective to how your child should respond to the bully if they approach them again. You know, obviously encourage them to talk to the teacher or the caregiver or the authority. Another one would be to ignore the bully. Just not react to the bully if they start to nag them on. It's just give the bully's words and actions zero power, and then focus on other children. Right? These are several options. And again, we could also look at this exact same framework by helping a bully themselves heal. Right? Because sometimes it's your child that's being the bully. Right? So we want to look again about the unmet needs underneath that, the stress factors, and again different solutions with that. We can just go through the exact same process. Let's look at another example of social conflicts, right? This could be subtle bullying or exclusion or other social issues that the child might face in the playground or with other kids in their classroom. Again, the unmet needs are very similar to the bully around connection, encouragement, information, attention, and then possible stress factors here. It could be aggressive type of stress if they're being emotionally or psychologically bullied, even if it's just in subtle ways like being excluded or overly teased, or it could just be passive stress because their need for connection and attention and participation with the other students is not being met. So again, possible solutions here are very similar, helping the child process the stress so that this program can stop and helping them heal, and encourage the child to resolve the conflict, right? So we might they can do this either through communication, through forgiveness, or just allowing some time and space between them and the other students that are involved, right? So here it's really important to give your child context. When we encounter this problem, we can give them a context so that the child doesn't take the other child's behavior personally. So that in this way it builds up their own self-esteem so that they don't feel bad if other children and other students are behaving in inappropriate ways to them. They don't take it personally, right? They're emotionally strong enough, their personal boundaries around their own personal power are strong enough that they don't let that influence them. Right? Now, if it is subtle bullying or exclusion, we want to treat it like bullying. If they're being overly teased or excluded, and it's a real problem, we again approach and talk to the teachers and principals to help to get their cooperation in resolving this situation and to get some extra attention on it. Because sometimes teachers or principals that are at the school, they just might not be aware of these things because it's going on at a subtle level, and they might be busy with other responsibilities as well. So sometimes it's really useful for us to bring these to their attention so they can engage in that as well. Let's look at learning disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, autism, or other behavioral problems, which are more and more common today. So possible unmet needs, again, the needs here are the same for normal, for other children. but sometimes they have extra needs. They need extra encouragement, or they might need to have a bit more patience with information and understanding. Perhaps the information and understanding needs to be repeated a little bit more. They often need extra attention and extra time processing, whether it's information or experiences. Sometimes children who have these learning abilities are a lot more sensitive, so they get overwhelmed more easily, or stimulation can affect them even more, so they need a little bit more time or space to process all this experience so that they can approach life or their school without having these programs running so much in the background. Okay? So possible stress factors here, it could be physiological, right? If there's a deeper issue that's neurological, or it could be passive stress. Oftentimes these types of behaviors are responses to underlying unmet needs that have been going on for a long time, or basically passive stress that has caused a child to develop these types of behavioral problems, these dissociative behavioral problems, so they're just not as engaged in the world and life around them. Possible solutions, right? Again, these children often require extra patience and extra care to reduce the amount of external influences and stimulation that can overwhelm their thinking and make it even more difficult for them to absorb and process information. So we have to be even more careful to reduce the overstimulation and perhaps whether it's visual, auditory, or emotional in their home environment. We also need to schedule extra time to help meet their needs, or extra care to reduce the influences of stress. My program, the ADHD Transformation Program, is recommended for children who have these types of behavioral problems. It's not just ADHD, but dyslexia, autism, or any other types of more severe behavioral problems. This program will help kind of go through all the influences in their home environment and reduce those that can cause them unnecessary stress or overwhelm. Let's look at reluctant or disillusionment or apathetic or the bored child, right? A child who's just not interested in school, right? Who's apathetic about it, who's kind of bored with homework, with school, and is just really disengaged. So possible unmet needs here is connection. That's a big one. They're not feeling connected for some reason. Whether it's at school or sometimes even at home, they might feel disconnected from you, and that carries through into the school environment. So you'll need to pay extra care with these children to meet their need for connection. Encouragement. Maybe they're just feeling discouraged. Information. Challenge, right? Appropriate stimulation, autonomy, creative expression. And another one here is vision. Oftentimes these children, especially the older ones when they get into their teen years, for teenage children who are just not interested in school, a great way to encourage them is to help them tap into their vision. And when we look at stress factors, it could be passive or it could be situational. Again, there might be stuff happening in their world, in their life, that's just making it hard for them to get involved in anything else because, again, these stress factor programs are running in the background that make it difficult for them to get fully mentally and emotionally 100% engaged in their environment. Or it could be physiological stresses as well. Perhaps they just don't have the physical endurance to stay focused and enthusiastic in their day for all day long because they're not getting enough nutrition, or they're too tired, or maybe they have some allergies. They might be allergic to some types of foods. Oftentimes, food allergies will be not extreme, like they don't always break out in an allergic response, but it can just cause a type of low-grade fatigue or difficulty paying attention, or sometimes hyperactivity can affect sometimes just their behavior if it's a mild food allergy. So this is another thing to pay attention to. Possible solutions, right? Spend regular time intervals connecting and playing with the child. They give them the full attention. This is absolutely crucial for children who are apathetic or bored or disconnected or disillusioned. Try the play attention time technique that I write about in Democratic Parenting. This is a technique where you give them this type of really high quality full attention for a specific period of time. And another thing you can do, like I just mentioned, is help the child see the vision, the benefits, and the positives of school, right? Inspire them using their vision by focusing on what they want and what's important for them. So, when you connect with your child, And it might be hard to get it out of your child at first if this is your child and they have these types of behaviors. And if you try and find out what they're interested in, what their vision is, they might be so disillusioned and so apathetic that nothing's going to come out. So you might have to kind of work on them a little bit. And the more you do this type of connection and play attention time, then they'll open up more, they'll feel more connected, they'll feel more vibrant, they'll feel generally happier. And then you can find out what their vision is. And you can kind of, once you do find out what they're passionate about, what they might want to be, what they might want to do when they grow up, especially, this is again especially useful for teenagers, then you can inspire them using their vision and by focusing on what they want and what's important to them. So that way you can use the homework example as why it's important for them to do that, to do well in school, because it will help them achieve their vision, right? For example, if they want to be a computer programmer, or if they want to be an athlete, any of these types of things, then you can show them the steps and give them information about why they're doing certain things and why it's important for them to engage in school and to approach school from a more positive perspective by using their vision as the reason, because it's going to get them to where they're going. So this can help inspire them and keep them focused. And if they do get off track, they do start behaving in ways that won't lead them to their vision, to their destination, then you can bring that vision back to help them refocus on where they're going and their direction in life. Okay? So another example here is peer pressure, inappropriate information, or worrisome ideas and influences, right? So this is the type of, if your child is starting to get engaged with the quote-unquote bad apples of the school that might be peer pressuring them to do things that aren't good, perhaps get involved in premature sex or drugs, or maybe they're swearing or acting disrespectful. Maybe they're talking about racist thoughts and influences and ideas. Then how do you handle this? How do you respond to this type of behavior? So again, we're going to use the same framework here. What are the unmet needs? Why has your child gone down this route? Why are these issues starting to come up? Or maybe they're not coming up, but they come to you genuinely curious, right? And if they do come to you genuinely curious and ask you about drugs or racism or sex, then you know that you've established a really good connection with your child, a really high degree of trust with your child. And you should be proud of yourself, because they're now coming to you to talk to you about these issues, to seek your advice, right? So if however they don't, and they just start to engage in these types of behaviors, right? So then you can intervene at that point. So first, you want to look at the possible unmet needs: connection, encouragement, processing, attention, feeling of contribution, affection, and information, right? These are some big ones. And possible role models, right? So here we might not look at stress, but the cause here is more the role models, perhaps the students that they're engaged with, or TV and media as a big role model that has a lot of racism, a lot of swearing, a lot of sex, and a lot of drugs, right? A lot of the media has all of these negative influences. So how do we respond then? Well, we need to give them information and attention. Address these difficult subjects with age-appropriate information. So we might talk to them about the birds and the bees and give them information appropriate to their age, right? Give them information so that they understand the negative implications of drugs and racism, for example. We can also set firm, clear, and loving limits about behaviors that you will not tolerate around swearing, racism, and perhaps other ideas. Now, the reason I say loving limits, right, and firm and clear, it has to be loving, because especially when we're dealing with older children where these issues will come up, right, preteens and teens, or perhaps other children that might be in the schoolyard and get exposed to inappropriate information. If we are not loving in our limits, and then we will cause them to feel disconnected, and then we will further cause them to move away from us rather than towards us, because if they feel disconnected, their need for connection will be further kind of lacking. So then they will move more towards the influence that we're trying to get them to move away from, because that influence, that the peer pressure, where it's coming from, they're giving them the attention and the affection, right, and the connection. That's why they're going there. So if we don't want them to go there, we need to provide that at home. So the way to do that is just set firm and clear limits. So, and this really helps them because it helps them to develop their own principles, their own values. And if we are firm in what our values and our principles are, and our children respect us, if all their needs are met and they respect us, then they're going to follow our footsteps. They're going to align themselves with our values and our principles because they know that their needs get met through their affiliation with us, through being a part of the family. They're not going to disassociate from the family's values because the other people, the quote-unquote bad apples, are meeting their needs that are met at home. Right? Does that make sense? I hope you can see how important it is to make sure that all their needs are met. And if their needs are met, then they're not going to move towards peer pressure or towards the bad influences. They're going to stay close to you and they're going to follow your lead on these things. So we can give them an empathetic perspective also about why other students may have different values. Not necessarily judgmental or overly critical, but empathetic, right? Because the empathetic perspective is the higher perspective. It's taking the higher ground, right? Rather than being, again, disconnected and judging and criticizing others. Because, perhaps these students who are at school and who are peer pressuring them towards negative things like sex, drugs, racism, and swearing, perhaps these kids were abused growing up, or their parents are alcoholics and they had no choice in the matter to kind of develop these coping habits, and their influences at home are so poor that they really just kind of found themselves in this situation. So we have to be empathetic and compassionate ourselves, and that will teach our children to be empathetic and compassionate. And then we never know. We never know what kind of wonderful miracles this can bring. It might be such that your child's positive and empathetic and compassionate energy and approach and their mind and their values and principles are so strong that it might peer pressure the bad apple towards becoming a good apple, right? You might just change a whole person's life by giving your child the tools, the perspective, and the information to be empathetic and understanding towards another student, that your child will influence that other student towards a more positive direction. That's why these things can make a big difference, right? And invest in extra full attention and connection time with your child. This will help peer pressure proof them. If you meet all their needs, they're not going to move towards other negative influences to have these needs met. Okay? Let's look at another example of an anxious and worried child that might be worried or anxious about tests and exams, right? Because these can come up a lot in school and they might just be anxious about that. So possible unmet needs. Maybe they don't have enough encouragement. Maybe they're lacking information or attention. So they might also have some role models, perhaps parents. And parents might be, the ones stressing them out because the parents have placed a lot of emphasis on the importance of them performing good in tests, right? Perhaps it's really important for the parents for them to have straight A's, and they won't tolerate anything else. And this puts a type of extreme pressure on the child. Or maybe it's the teachers who's doing the same thing. Or maybe it's other students. There might be competition in class, or the student feels that for some reason or another that because of how other students are perceiving the tests and the results from the test, they need to perform really well, or it might make them anxious and worried. Or again, it might be TV and media, right? What they see on the TV and media about tests and exams. So possible solutions, right? So this might be, again, due to the child basing their self-worth too much on their accomplishments. They may have fear of disappointing the parent or the teacher, or losing the parent's or teacher's approval and attention if they don't do as well as they think the adult wants them to do. To help them through this, give them encouragement in other areas of their life, even when they don't succeed, right? So you want to remove the importance of achievement and success in some areas, right? It's great to encourage them. They need to be encouraged to achieve and to succeed on these things, but be careful you don't put too much emphasis on this that it causes them to get really stressed and worried about that. Perhaps they've received inappropriate information about the consequences of doing poorly on tests or not getting a perfect grade, right? We have no idea what they might have heard or what they might have seen in the media or elsewhere that might have given them the idea that maybe they're going to fail terribly in life if they don't get if they get anything less than straight A's or everything perfect. Okay. Or maybe they don't do well to begin with, right? Maybe they're just barely passing, or they fail a lot and they're starting to feel really bad about themselves. So at that point, we really want to encourage them. We want to work with them academically, spend more time with them on their homework so that they can gain a sense of control and mastery over their subject matter, because any child can learn the information that's presented to them in school. They might need a tutor, or they might need some extra time and attention to get there, and it can be mastered by any child. So we can give information as well so that they don't take this experience of tests in school out of context, right? Give them a more balanced context so they see it in the greater perspective of things. Also, we spend more time with them in fun play, right? That doesn't involve perfection or performance. Again, this will meet their need for encouragement and attention and just kind of break up some of the tension or pressure or stress that's built up around that. Okay, so those are the examples around different ways we can approach different issues that can come up around the school setting, and how we can use the framework, the democratic parenting framework, to overcome them. Now, I'm going to go through some of the key takeaways to help your child thrive socially and academically in school. Engage your child in developing a routine after school so that their homework gets done. Your child has time and space to just process his or her day, to just do just some downtime or some self-directed play, but not screen time. Okay, screen time, video games, movies, iPads, tablets, any type of stuff on the screen is just stimulation, and it doesn't help them process things. It doesn't help them process information or experience. It actually distracts them from that. It's an escapism. It takes them away from processing it. It basically adds on to their issues. If we look at, the need for processing, again, we go back to the computer analogy, like they have programs that are running in the background. The need for processing, when we give the child time and space, it allows them to process these programs, to let them run, to turn them off, to make more space in their minds, to be more present, and to basically just process whatever they need to process. But if we put them in front of the screen or give them more stimulation or more things to deal with, it's just turning on another program. Okay, so it's key here is during the processing time, just some time and space and downtime, whatever it is, not screen time. Another thing they need to also make sure that's in their routine at the end after school is that they have a healthy meal, that they get supper in there. Also, they get to bed early enough so they have a good night's sleep, and to have some time connecting and communicating with you, the parent. Right? So these are basically 5 main components that need to go into their time after school. And you want to develop this after school routine with your child. This will meet their need for autonomy. They'll have a sense of ownership over their routine, so that they'll be more compliant and more willing to engage in homework and everything else. So it's important to engage them in that, and you do that within your own schedule, right? Based upon how much time you have. There might be very little time for some of these things, but you make sure to include that. You might put the connection and communication with you combined with eating a healthy meal, right? It might be part of the dinner time where they do that, or part of their homework time. Maybe that's when you're going to sit down with them and really connect with them, right? Or maybe the time and space for them to just process their day might be before they go to bed, when they're having a bath, right? Part of their bedtime routine. So there's a lot of different ways that you can organize that, and you do it within your own capacity and circumstance. Another key takeaway is to engage your child in understanding the benefits and focusing on the positives of school based upon what they want, their interests, and their vision for their life. This is particularly useful for older children, like specifically preteens and teens. Younger than preteens, they might have their vision for life might not be as firm and set, but you can still use it for them too. You can just make it fun, right? To focus and for them to see the benefits and why they're going to school. Also remember, always listen to your child before you preach, right? As you're getting them to engage in understanding the benefits and focus on the positive, you'll probably be preaching a little bit, but first you want to listen to them and allow your child the space and freedom to express themselves. Then help them direct their minds to a positive attitude. Okay? Another key takeaway is when emotions and stress are in the way, help your child process and heal their stress through these 7 natural ways to heal from stress. Okay, these are extracted from my book, Democratic Parenting, right? Talking about their problems, symbolic play, crying, laughing, sleeping, sweating, or muscle release. These are all natural ways that children and basically any human will process emotions and stress, to just release them, to get them through their system. Okay. If you want more information on this, you can get my book, Democratic Parenting, or also if you go to theparentlearningclub.com, you can see there's under the webinars, there's a webinar called Helping Children Heal from Childhood Stress or Childhood Stress Disorder, and I talk more about these specific ways and how to use these to help your child through these stress and to process that tension. Also, get actively involved in your child's learning. If they need help with their homework, make it a special time for you to connect with them and help them through any of the subjects or parts of their schoolwork that they struggle with. Now, don't do it for them, but encourage them to find the answers themselves. And most importantly, make it fun. Be creative. Perhaps you set up a space in your home, you make a special area where you and your child can do their homework, and you make it fun. Maybe get a snack or something involved, or you can play a game before and after, right? There's different ways you can make it fun. You can even have a type of a reward system for them to complete their homework. Now, if you do use rewards, make sure it doesn't become like a bribe, because bribes can be, can also have negative consequences as well. But rewards themselves can be fun. So, you want to use them, the judgment of rewards at your own discretion. So just be creative with it. Now make them feel like their learning is a family experience, that you're involved with them, so that they don't feel that they're all alone facing that challenge. Meet your child where they are at. After school, make it a priority to first emotionally connect with them based upon where they are at, right? Don't try to take them out of what they're feeling, where they're at. Meet them where they're at. Don't force them to talk about everything that happened at school immediately when you see them after school, right? Give them some time and some space to process their day. And then they will open up to you about what's really important to them, as long as you include regular time in your schedule to connect and play with them. If you don't, right, there just might not be that time, and they might not have enough time for them to process those things, and things can build up, right? And you might find yourselves facing an issue that could have been prevented a long time ago had you had more regular connection and time to communicate with them, for them to bring up these issues when they were much smaller and they didn't build, right? So just give your child the time and space to process what they need to process, and then as long as there's some connection and communication time that you have with them, you'll find that they'll start to open up a lot more. You might guide them towards this a little bit, right? If you do suspect there might be something going on at school with a bully or in their social environment, or they're struggling with something, then you can kind of start to guide them towards that in your connection time. But be careful, again, not to put pressure on them, and to create space around the subject so that they open up to you rather than you kind of force them to open up to you around these subjects. Now, important to remember that if your child is struggling on any level at school, right, because of either aggressive stress, passive stress, or situational stress, maybe you've just moved or going through a divorce or something and that's affecting your child, just maintain a close relationship and communication with your child's teacher and or principal, right, to help your child get maybe some extra attention that they might need. So don't be afraid, and it's really important to reach out to your child's teacher and principal to really have that connection with them, the relationship with them, so that you can work together as a team with the school, with the important authority figures at the school, towards your child's education. Okay, so that concludes the main information part of the webinar. Now I'm going to open it up for questions. right? So if you have any questions, you can click on the raise your hand button there, or you'll notice there's a little chat box on your webinar application, and you can just type in your questions there, and I'll go through them and answer as many as I can before I have to run off and pick up my own child from school. So let's look at what questions we have in here. Okay, so let's look at the first one. So we have a question from Fricky Van Zyl. The question here is, my grandson is 14. He has ADHD and ODD. That's oppositional defiant disorder. And he is using Ritalin daily, but he has the most volatile outbursts. If we try to let him face the consequences, the outbursts escalate, or a new outburst is triggered. How can we let him face the consequences? What must we do? Please. Okay, Freaky, this is a more situationally based issue. So with these outbursts, what we want to look at, again, we look at the three underlying reasons. So when a child is having outbursts, temper tantrums, anything like that, whether they're a young child, a toddler, older child, or even a teenager, we have to look at the stress is a big factor. Okay, we have to look at what the reasons for stress. Is it aggressive stress? Is it passive stress or situational stress? A lot of the time, there's a variety of passive stress, unmet needs that are there. So we want to look through those 15 needs and try to figure that out. Now, there's specific ways to help children and teenagers through outbursts and temper tantrums. It's not easy. What I would recommend for you is to contact me at support@parentlearningclub.com, and we could do some personal coaching together, because there's a lot more information that needs to be shared here to understand the overall situation and what types of things that you can do in order to help them to help him through the outbursts, right? So because the consequences here, but when a child is having outbursts and temper tantrums, the consequences don't work that well, because consequences, we're talking about the executive function of the brain, the frontal cortex, right? But when the child is having an outburst, they're having what we call the amygdala hijacking. The amygdala, lizard survival, instinctual, emotional part of their brain, is ruling all their behavioral and all their judgment, right? And it's virtually impossible for them to get into the executive function from there. So we need to basically drain all the influences of stress, to drain all that buildup of stress, and to limit those influences of stress, and to help them just fully release it and get through all that rage and emotions. Once we get through that, then they will be in their higher executive functions, and then they can start to have more self-discipline to control themselves when they start finding themselves approaching their behavior. So, we need to look at, again, what their perhaps unmet needs are and the sources of stress, and then use that as our foundation. Okay, I recommend, like I said, to contact me, and we can do some private coaching to help you through this. But the basic approach will be, just like I said, to figure out the root cause and to approach it from a systematic level by figuring out the unmet needs and going from there. Okay, Trisha asks, how do you seek to understand the source of difficulty, whether it's unmet needs, stress, or models? How does a parent know? Okay, so you just have to spend some time, right? So you figure out, well, first, what is the issue? What's the problem? And then what's the source, right? So is it an unmet need? You can go through those 15 needs that I went through in this webinar. And this webinar you'll have access to this webinar recording. It will be uploaded for you, and you'll have lifetime access to it. So you can go through it. You can pause it at any point. You have the MP3 audio recording as well that you can download and listen to at any time. So you can go through some of them, and you may basically treat those 15 needs like a checklist, and ask yourself, okay, does my child need a bit more attention? Do they need a bit more of this, a bit more of that? Or is there stress built up, right? Anytime there's a type of emotion, or sometimes, whether it's fear, based or anger-based or grief-based emotions, oftentimes is a type of, we can just assume that stress to some degree is there. But we want to basically see, a child is behaving in a certain way. There's a difficulty that they're facing, and we just go through it, just systematically go through. Could it be role models? Well, okay, maybe they're modeling this behavior for me because I get very anxious and stressful when these circumstances are arising. So my child has probably learned to respond to the situations in similar ways because I am their primary role model, right? And so then from there, you say, okay, I'm going to change my behavior in the way that I am around my child so that they don't develop this negative, stressful response pattern that, that I developed from my own parents. And if we're honest with ourselves, if we look at a lot of how what we learned how to respond to situations and stress, we learned a lot of it from our own parents as well. I often say that children will inherit our best parts and our worst parts from us, right? Our children get many wonderful characteristics and traits from us, but they also get very many terrible ones too, and we have to be honest with ourselves to acknowledge that as well. And that opens the door for us to improve ourselves and to minimize the negative influence that we have with our own children, because they will model our behavior whether we want them to or not. And then we look at, okay, could it be stress, right? Does the child have any emotions? Are they having outbursts, or in their behavior or in their communication, do they seem excessively desperate in their tone of voice, or and then we can see, okay, stress might be an issue. And with the unmet needs, just go through the 15 needs like a checklist and see if any of those might be involved. So I hope that's helpful for you, Tricia. Okay, there's a question from Deborah. How do you deal with a child who resents any parental guidance or attempts to engage? Great question, Deborah. So a child who is resentful of this has a major lack of connection. Their need for connection is really at the breaking point. So specific techniques to reach through the disconnect are important here. You can do this through what I call connective communication. And there's an entire chapter in my Democratic Parenting book on connective communication to help achieve this. So the way you speak, right? So this specifically is the tone of voice, the words you use, and also your body language, right? Eye contact and touch. You can use this all to help reach through this disconnect. And you can use words, again, the words you use, and really important, the tone of your voice to help the child's resistance and resentment basically dissolve, right? So I definitely recommend learning this type of connective communication. I also did a webinar that you can get the recording of on the Parent Learning Club on this. It's called Dealing with Defiance. So if you go at theparentlearningclub.com under webinars, Dealing with Defiance, and then in this I talk specifically about using connective communication. But basically that's the way to do it, is you need to find ways to reach through that disconnect and focus on connection. Meeting the need for connection, also the need for attention, right? Again, we're coming back to the fundamental needs and to figure out what they are, and then approaching it from that level. Okay, Greg asks, I have access to a recording to these, but what about the slides? I want my wife to see them. Yes, the recording will be a video recording, so you'll see your wife can watch the whole thing as well, the whole video. You'll get the video that you can watch online, and you'll also get the MP3, which you can download from the website as well. Okay? Okay, Rebecca asks, how much downtime is needed per day? Great question. That really depends upon the child, and it depends upon how much time you have available and how much they need to process, right? So just try it out, test it out. If you can give your child an hour of downtime a day, that's fantastic, right? Again, it depends upon their age, but sometimes we don't have the schedule available for that. Sometimes we have very busy schedules, and an hour is just not enough time for them to include everything else. But it's a matter of priority. Downtime is extremely valuable, right? By giving your child the ability just to take some downtime is really giving them a habit that will carry them through for the rest of their lives. It's a real skill and a habit that will help them deal with all kinds of issues their whole life long by teaching them this habit of just taking some downtime to just process things. Now, during the downtime, you can do what's called self-directed play, or help set your child up for self-directed play, which allows them to process experiences through this type of symbolic play that I talked about. Again, in my book, Democratic Parenting, there's a whole chapter on self-directed play and how to set that up. So basically, as much downtime as you can would be a great thing to include for your child. Okay, so let's see, another question here. From Marianne, she asks, what are some specific ways to get my 10-year-old daughter to slow down and think through her homework assignments instead of rushing them? Okay, that's a great question, Marianne. So one thing to do would be for you to sit down with her. If you can arrange that in your schedule so that you can make it connecting time, and just your influence, and you're going to help her change the pace of the assignments. Maybe what you could do is you could read them to her, right? So rather than her reading them, she could sit on one side of the table and you could read her one assignment after the other. And then while she's coming up with the answers, before maybe she writes them or something like that, you could kind of give her you could kind of give her some probing or leading questions or feedback to help guide her into going a bit slower. Now, again, I'm not sure the nature of the assignments. If it's like a workbook where she's filling things out, then you can kind of go through and read the first line and give her the workbook, right? Or and basically what you want to do is interrupt her pattern of rushing through them and going them too fast and not thinking through them. So you might not have to do this for the rest of her homework life, but just you want to interrupt the pattern by getting involved in there for each class, or sorry, each homework night, to get in there and really involved and somehow find a way where you're setting the pace and you're actively involved and kind of interrupting her ability to rush through, right? And then doing that is making her slow down and think about them. And again, you want to do it, and you want to remove any tension from it, so you're going to make it fun. So if you approach that in a lighthearted way, and you say, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to, rather than do the homework like we used to, now I am going to read something, and I want you to give me the answer before you write it down, right? Something like that. Now, this is an investment on your time, right? This is an investment of your time to do that with your child. It's going to take time away from maybe other stuff that you might have done while she's doing your homework. But you really got to look at the greater picture of what your priorities are. By helping her do this, you're gonna change her whole approach to doing this type of paperwork, right? And that's going to change the way that she will perform and function in her work life later on. To give her the ability to slow down and to think things through is going to change the way that she processes information. That's a gift that has no price value. That's going to help her in so many ways in her entire life. So you got to look at your priorities from a greater perspective. Sometimes when you're assessing the value of engaging your child in this homework, right, by being engaged with them, you're taking time away from something you might have else done. And it's not always easy for us parents because we have so many responsibilities, and we can find our cleaning or our dishes or other things get left behind because we're investing this time with our children to do this, and it just feels like more responsibility, and that's the last thing a lot of us parents need. So we might just look at our entire schedule and start to decommit from unnecessary things. Maybe there's too many extracurricular activities that really are unnecessary, that are adding to the overwhelm and to the stress and overstimulation to our lives and our children's lives. And it's causing just this kind of superficial kind of touch on a lot of stuff, rather than going deeper into these different things and to learning different ways to think and approach homework or other challenges in life. And it's not allowing for any type of down or processing time either. So it's a great opportunity to reassess our entire schedule and our priorities within that schedule. Sometimes we need to do that in order to make the space and time to help our children through these challenges. And again, we might not do it forever, but the thing to start with is to interrupt these negative patterns of facing these challenges which our children might be engaged in. I hope that's helpful, Marianne. Okay, and there's a question from John. what is the best way to turn a child away from the models of violent video games? Yes, that's a great question, John. That's a big problem in our society today, is that the video games have become very violent and overstimulating. And it it's basically stimulating a lot of their emotional and stress hormones in their system, and they get all kinds of chemical release in their body, and it becomes very addictive. And then our children's attention can get locked in these extreme stimulating experiences of video games, and it's harder for them to kind of focus and pay attention in slower pace environments like the classroom environment, where they need to focus and pay attention to. They're not as engaged because it's not nearly as exciting and stimulating as these video games or violent video games that they play. So the thing is to just assert your authority and to create a limit, right? And to say, there's different ways you can approach it, and it's really up to you to decide. You might just put a firm limit and say, okay, no more violent video games, and I'll tell you why. And give your reasons why. Say, there is these violent video games. They might just be on the TV and computer, but they're disturbing. And in real life, these types of things happen. And just give them information, give them understanding, give them that context. And this, again, it's a need, right? If you're going to make a decision that's going to change their routine and it's going to take away something that they enjoy, you need to give them information. You need to give them understanding as to why. Otherwise, they're going to be resentful. Otherwise, they're going to be hurt. Otherwise, they're not going to understand. It's going to cause them a type of confusion. And it's really going to be a type of passive stress because this need for information and understanding goes unmet. So you need to give them understanding as why you're doing this. You can say it's not, it's not part of my value or values and my principles to promote this type of violent behavior through video games. That in many countries, these things are actually happening, and this type of violence is awful. And you can say, imagine, what this would be like in real life. It's terrible. And your child might rebuttal and say, "Well, no, but it's just a video game. It's not real, right?" It's and acknowledge that, but you need to, if you do decide to go that route, you need to just stand firm in your principles, in your values, and never go back on that. And then your child will respect that. They might resent it on some degree, but at least they'll respect that, and their trust for you will be enhanced, right? Their ability to kind of trust your limits and your boundaries will go a long way for their respect for you. But another approach you can do, you can just set limits, right? You can say, okay, if the characters are too real looking, I'm not going to allow that. If there's actual blood or violence or shooting, I'm not going to allow it. And basically set specific limits. Or you might just limit the amount of exposure they have. And that maybe they only get one day on the weekends to play video games like that. Or if your child has friends, right, that they go over to their place, and that's where they get exposed to those video games. Well, you can talk to your friends' parents about maybe not allowing those video games to be played when your child goes visits, if you have that type of relationship where that's appropriate. Or you might just find other activities on your weekends or your other times and engage your child to engage with your child for them to do those instead of to go over to their friend's place where they get exposed to those violent video games. So again, or you could do that within your own home, is just start to do other types of activities, other types of extracurricular outings and whatnot, so that there's less time for them to play these video games, and just keep them too busy. So there's different ways to do that. Now, again, any of these ways, if you do put a firm limit with that, you're going to face more resistance. You might face resentment. You might face, tantrums or other things. But it's how you communicate it. If you use the connective type of communication and give the information in ways that they can understand, they'll be a lot more compliant. If you give them something to replace that with, they'll be a lot more satisfied. They don't feel like that they've lost something. Or if you say, okay, you say for until you're 16 or until you're 18, or until you have your own place, I don't want these video games played in here, right? So you can give them these types of kind of timelines so that they know, this type of predictability in their life. They know that eventually at some point they'll get it. So these are just different ways that you can kind of set up limits and turn them away from these violent video game models. Okay, so Marianne asks, how do you respond to a 10-year-old daughter saying, I'm not popular, social issues at school that are hard, and I know, but not sure what she's really saying to me? Okay, that's a great question. So basically she's saying there's a couple of things, right? So one is the unmet need for connection with some other students, or the need for attention, right? Popular means that they're getting a lot of attention. You know, or maybe there's some lack of information and understanding of why, you know, what's important about being popular and the context behind that. So if you meet you know, you might spend a bit more time with your child at home to kind of give them that full attention and to meet those needs that they're missing at school. You might kind of give them a greater perspective about, you know, why popular is or isn't important in the grander scheme of things, and what's more important is some other things rather than popularity. Another influence there will be role models, right? So you might kind of see, you know, if they're listening to songs or watching shows or being exposed to any type of media that might be influencing the importance they put on popularity in schools. You know, these types of things. But if a child's needs are met at home, you know, around connection, attention, encouragement, affection, particularly, and processing, then their need for these needs to be met through their peers will be a lot less, because they know that at home they're met, right? And then they'll be a lot more kind of self-reliant, and their self-esteem will be a lot more solid regardless of what other children think. So I hope that's a helpful approach with that, Marianne. The key again is just to focus on meeting those needs within their own home and giving information and context, and just allow your child to keep, you know, expressing themselves, right? Sometimes they just need to talk it out. Nothing really needs to be fixed there at all. Sometimes they just need to, and that's like one of the natural ways to process stress or feelings, is just to talk it out. So by just allowing that space for your child to say these things and to share how she feels, sometimes the best thing that you can do, and sometimes there's very little more than that. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for your time and attention today, for joining me on this webinar. It's a real pleasure to share this information with you. This webinar, like I said, has been recorded and it will be uploaded within a couple of days, and you will all receive an email with a link on how to and information, basically instructions how to access this recording afterwards. I wish you all a wonderful school year, and if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact me at support@parentlearningclub.com, and I look forward to staying in touch. Remember, every single day, give your child all your love, give yourself that same love too, and together we can build a brighter future.